Starting. All right, flexion, extension of the spine. So let's hold the head, elbows up to the ceiling, soften the knees and lean back. Get that stretch in the upper back, stretch across the chest, and then coming all the way forwards, hug the knees and get a gentle stretch of the backs of the legs. So initially keeping the knees bent. Again, all the way up, stretching. So keep the knees soft. We can stretch the fronts of the thighs, that gentle lean back, and again forwards, holding the backs of the knees, bowing the head. Here, check in with the calf muscles, give them a good squeeze, and the hamstrings, see how they're getting on. Just waking up that feeling so the brain is switched on, thinking about these muscles, relaxing, lengthening, and last time all the way up. This time we're going to take steeple top fingers and we'll take a stretch back and then a little bit side to side. So waking up the whole body now, trying to lift the ribs out of the hips, and even as if we're lifting the pelvis away from the thigh bone. So feeling that length, stretch as we reach side to side. And then last of all, we're twisting the spine. So soften the knees and take a little swiveling, looking over to one side and then the other. And next we're taking a full forward fold with straight legs. Now the backs of the legs are a little bit warmer. Hold the backs of the legs wherever the hands fall. And we'll take it in turns to bend one knee at a time. So you're sinking into one hip, no forcing. And then slowly straightening and bending the other knee. Nice, deep, steady breathing in and out of the nose. It's a warm day, so let's try and move slowly, mindfully, so we don't get dizzy. So soften both knees and take a roll up through the spine, one vertebra at a time. And at the top, roll the shoulders back and down. Right leg stepping forwards, feet pointing forwards, that pyramid position of the legs. So not too wide a stance. Let's keep going with that forward and backward movement in the upper back. But initially, let's feel that pelvic tilt. So we get a stretch in the front of this left leg. Pelvis tilting, tailbone pointing down to the floor. We can hold and support the back here, fingers pointing down so the chest stays wide open. So when you're ready, we're coming into that forward fold. So this is now your deeper stretch for the hamstring of that front leg. And then rising up back to our starting position. We feel that tilt to the pelvis and a slight leaning back. So we're supporting the lower back, hands pressing into the buttocks, and once more forwards. More dynamically, we can extend the arms. So those parallel arms, reaching back, try and keep the hips square to the front, lengthening, reaching into the fingertips, and last time coming into the foot fold. Throughout today's session, I want you to have or develop a little bit more awareness in the positioning of the pelvis and how that then affects how we use the core, the spine, the backs of the legs. Before we do that, let's switch legs. Left foot forward, right leg back, toes still pointing forwards. Find that pelvic tilt, hip flexors, getting a gentle stretch, not overdoing it. And we'll start by supporting the lower back and coming into a forward fold. Feel how the back of the leg lengthens, but without going too far, into that extension of the spine, leaning back, chest wide open, press the hands into the lower back, so we're deepening the hip flexor stretching. And again, maybe two more rounds, but with the option of extending the arms. So the core, the stabilizing muscles are having to work a little bit harder. So for the last round on this side, all your awareness into the pelvis. So now in your mind's eye, transform the pelvis into a bowl of water. As we lean back, I'm trying to posteriorly tilt and pull water out the back. And as I come forwards, this anterior tilt, the water's flowing forwards. Okay, roll up through the spine. And now just kick back, just because that's quite deep work for the backs of the legs and into the knees. Brilliant. Next, into a chair, but we're not going into the fullest power chair. We've got the feet hip distance apart, and we swoop the arms either side of the body, bend the knees, make sure you can still see your toes, and it's a small chair, for a really tall chair we're going for initially. Okay, with the pelvis, try and tip the water out the back. Feel that strong work into the core, and now tip the water forwards. So as we tip back, feel how strongly you engage the core. Squeeze navel to spine. And then the reverse, as we tilt the pelvis, see how deeply that then influences the stretch on the hamstrings. So all about spine mobility, where we're focusing on the position of the pelvis. A few more rounds, just feeling that pelvic tilt as though you're doing a cat-cow in a Utkatasana setup. No overdoing it here. You don't need to go to your edge, but you can deepen your squat. And see if you can go right to the end of that out breath where we engage the core. You're nearly there. A couple more rounds. Rounding that flexion extension. And then let the fingers find the floor and roll up through the spine. Just take a gentle swing where your back heel lifts. And breathe. Brilliant, brilliant. We're going to keep the legs wide, and we're going to be adding on a chest clamp and opening. So legs nice and wide. Start with an inner thigh warm up to bend this left knee. And get that inner thigh stretch side to side just a couple of times. You can give a little massage to the muscles at the tops of the legs here. And breathe in preparation. So initially we're going to go for bent knees, fingers to the floor. And if we find that gentle pelvic tilt again, more restricted movement, but again feel the impact, the engagement in the core. And then the strength work for the backs of the legs, the glutes. Once more in that kind of cat-cow movement for the lower spine. And then we're keeping the right hand on the floor and clamming open that left arm. Here you can either keep the knees bent or straighten the legs. So let's have 5 openings to the left. Breathing in, so we're getting that, simultaneously getting an inner thigh stretch on the right leg. Nice flowing movement. Stretch into the fingertips so that the whole of the arm that's moving active is engaging. Wherever you are, make the next one your last, and then we'll switch sides. So pause long enough to feel the inner thigh stretch and the fingertips reaching for the ceiling, taking out any collapse in the lower shoulder, and then let's switch sides. So again, knees can be bent, we can be on fingertips, you can put your hands on a block, bring the floor up to meet you. So again, we're on 5, but we're taking it to the other side. See if you can turn your tummy button over to the right as well. So we're getting the whole of the spine twisting. Remembering to stretch the fingers. The more we think about creating space in even the tiny joints of the hand, the more we're starting to influence length and release tension from the connective tissue. I think we've got one more on this side. And then hands to the floor, bend the knees and roll up through the spine. Toe and heel the feet in. Let's take a little leg swing with the leg in front of the body. Side to side, and then the other side, the other leg. Brilliant. So all of that work for your spine, your legs. I'm hoping you're all ready for Warrior 2. Into a high lunge. And this is all about knees safely keeping in line with the toes. So start with the legs wide, left toes pointing to the left wall, and then we bend the knee. Knee over the ankle, knee tracking over the toe. You can have a quick look. So we're going to start with our hands on the hips. Now, to come into a high lunge, we want the knee always tracking in the same direction as the toes. So with the hand on the hip, feel as though you're lifting the hip and the heel of the back foot up, and then dialing them down so we're facing the side. Very deep hip flexor stretch here, bit of balance work here. And now the reverse. So opening and returning to your starting position. Let's try that on the other side. So starting with the toes, both sets of toes pointing forward. Right toes turn to face the right wall. Bend the right knee. Now, obviously this is the warrior two you're used to, but we just want to have this awareness in the whole of the left leg, almost lifting as we lift the heel of the foot and dialing the whole of the leg down so that we can turn to face the side wall. Okay, pause just to get that yummy stretch on the front of the hip, and then let's return back to where we were. Okay, let's add on the arms. Back to the first side. Left toes turn out, bend the knee. Take a deep breath in here. Now with this back right arm, we can take the fingertips to the floor, and as if that action is dialing, helping to dial the heel up, the hip down, and we can come into this high lunge position. Stretching, feel a diagonal line from the back heel up into the fingertips. So like a tug of war, two directions, feeling length along the body. And then we can take a back stroke with this front arm, the right arm, in front you're mirroring me, and return to our warrior two. Immediately to the other side. So left toes forward, right toes to the right, warrior two. Your back arm, reach down to the floor, dial the hip down, the heel lifts, and now tug of war, stretch into the fingertips, send energy down the back heel. Breathe deeply and lengthen. Slight tailbone tuck, so your tailbone is pointing down towards the floor. Your front arm, back stroke, and simultaneously, mindfully lower the back heel. I'm going to do that once more, and I'm going to give you an option to make it even more challenging. If you've got it, feel free to just flow. So we're warrior two, high lunge, back stroke, reset. Warrior two, sweep, high lunge, back stroke, return. We can go side to side. Otherwise, nice and slowly with me. Left toes turn out, find your warrior two. Back arm, prepare, lower to the floor. Pick up the back heel, dial that back leg down. Find the stretch. The active arm we've just used, we complete the circle. Back stroke and return. Other side. Warrior two. Starting to turn the whole of the upper body, but taking the back leg with us. High lunge. Stretch. Back stroke and return. So for everyone, another round, but with an option. From our high lunge, we can face the back wall. So you could call it a revolved warrior two. To only add on that element if you're desperate to make life difficult for yourself. It's lovely just feeling the time we can take to move mindfully. So the transitioning between asanas can be as strengthening and mindful as actually the end position. So don't go for the revolved warrior two unless you feel really secure. I bet your arms are beginning to feel the work, lifting the arms higher than the heart. Your heart's working a lot harder. We're toning the arms. Come on, one more each side. Whichever version, if you want to carry on into that stretch twist. How are we doing? Shrug out the arms, kick back, give a little can-can shake out for the hips, knees, ankles. Amazing. So I'm going to lower the camera. We're all going to meet in a down dog. And you're going to pedal it through from one foot to the other. And I'll join you there. So take your time getting down there, and definitely don't worry about getting the heels to the floor or straightening the legs. Beauty of the down dog is we can work on lengthening the spine. And then when the heels are ready to get to the floor, and when the hamstrings are ready to lengthen, you'll achieve that upside down V shape. So wherever you are, let's bend the knees and crouch low. So we're really lengthening from the tailbone into the fingers. Now with the hands, everyone who's in the last session, we're talking about turning jaw lids. So opening to the side, so we open the chest. So can we get that action without actually turning the hands? Have the intention of opening jaw lids away from each other, opening across the chest. So we're active into 10 fingers, the underside knuckles, the heels of the hands, and the whole of the arm is active. We'll pedal through, getting those fire toes, a big flexion, deep flexion in the toes, and simultaneously getting that calf stretch in the other leg. Keep the arms active and notice if you find that you've lost that action of turning the jaw lids. Long spine and feeling the length in the lower body as well. So pigeon, we're going to take the right leg forwards. Don't worry about the angle of the shin, just place the right knee towards the right heel of the hand, and let's knee and toe your left leg away. Finding a stretch for the front of the leg, and we're working on the external rotators of this front leg. Don't worry if you're on the other leg, we'll go straight onto the other side afterwards. So depending on how tight or mobile you might be feeling, we might just start with rolling left and right. If this is too much of a back bend, come down onto your forearms. And again, just that rock side to side, we're working towards the hips being level. Start to soften, even out the breath if it's feeling a little bit jagged after your standing warriors. So two approaches to pigeon. We can either take this restorative forward fold and just concentrate on finding heaviness in the body. Or you can still work on this length in the straightened leg and think how we are in a sphinx position. So the hands are planted and we're drawing the elbows into the waist and back. So it's chest forward and shoulders back. So again, active through the arms, and by pressing the top of that extended leg, the foot into the floor, we're really getting some lovely release in the front of the hip. Wherever you are, whichever emphasis you want to work with is all great. And we're here just for another breath, and then we'll come via a down dog to take it to the other side. So if you are in an upright position and your lower back is tolerating and is fine with a little bit of a back bend, claw the fingertips in, and as if you're dragging your chest forward. If you want to look over a cliff, that's a sense of chest forward, shoulders back, active arms, lengthening across the abdomen, getting that work into the front of the hip here. And let's tuck your toes under at the back and slowly make your way to a down dog and pedal it through. Brilliant. So just make a mental note of which leg you had stepped forward last time, and we're switching to the other leg. So when you're ready, gliding so the knee comes towards the corresponding wrist, knee back, knee down, and toe and knee the back leg away. So just finding where's a doable stretch for you. A little bit of a rock side to side. Now I should have said, even if the restorative position forearms is still too deep, do switch to that mermaid position so both knees are bent and we can take a more gentle leaning. So just find, do make those modifications just to be a little bit more comfortable. And before you choose which area of emphasis you want to go for, you might want to try both. So feel your chest drawing forward, shoulders back, longest possible spine and neck, pointing your toes away at the back, pressing into the top of the foot to active through the whole body. or pushing the floor away, maybe resting down and rocking side to side. And maybe having the discipline to go for the one you're less inclined to do. If your external rotators are in fine working order, this is going to be less helpful. Maybe you want to work on stretching out the hip flexors of the back leg. If you're feeling any warmth coming into the lower spine, we can have the intention of tucking under to try to engage the core so that we've got a little bit more support for the lower back. We're nearly there. One last breath on this side, and then we're going to take a child's pose. So to do this, hands under the shoulders, tuck the toes under at the back, and slowly, slowly, slowly take the knees back in line. Have a little sway side to side before sitting back on the heels. Hands can be in the extended child pose position or resting by your ankles. Take a breather and then join me lying on your left hand side in this upright position. So we have a right angle in the arm, we're on the forearm, and I'm going to give you options. So your top leg placed on the floor in front, and we can work on an inner thigh stretch and lengthening the side of the body. So breathing deeply here. Quite quickly you'll start to feel you're lengthening, you're maybe breathing into the intercostals, the ribs, this lower side here, and stretching along the side of the body. We're avoiding collapsing into the shoulders, chest open wide, and we're using the back of the hand to gently add on an inner thigh stretch. Chin's nodded in towards the chest, long spine, back of the pelvis, back of the head in the same plane. Now, if you want something a little bit more dynamic, top fingertips for support, and we switch to a clown. We've just got time for 6, opening the knees wide and then lowering. So let's still work the side of the body, feeling the length, softening through the neck. Try and keep the shoulder in line with the elbow. Any niggles in your wrist here, just make a fist. So make those adjustments. We all know the difference between the good pain and any sharp or jagged or anything that's slightly more uncomfortable. Make the change. Squeeze in your core. Remember, every in-breath we can maybe make the spine, neck a little bit longer. So breathing space into the body. And then everyone will go for a cycling movement. So we can still use the top hand for support. Kick the leg forwards, then point, extend back as far as you can with the leg straight, bend into the bottom and return. So we flex forwards and point back. Now try and stabilize the upper body. So we're working strongly into the obliques, the abdominal wall pulled in so that we can avoid wavering in the upper body. Give me one more on this side, and then we're flipping over to the other side. So it's either that static position or the dynamic clown. So when you're ready, other side. Position, and just look down and check that your elbow is actually under the shoulder. Hips stacked, top foot on the floor, knee pointing up to the ceiling, and just feel an inner thigh stretch. Remember that pelvic tilt as if you're trying to pull water out the back. Breathing deeply, long spine, long neck. Option to switch to your clown. But sometimes I quite like to put my toe kind of in the back of the nook of the lower knee so I get a little bit more opening in a thigh stretch. Can you match each movement with a phase of your breath? Pull in the core, squeeze and open. Long spine, long, across the shoulders, across the chest. Doing well. It's a hot day. Keep breathing. Stop for water if you need. Try to move the knees if it's through tar. Create some resistance so it's extra strengthening. And then let's move to that cycle. So heel forwards. Stretch like you're lengthening the legs. Reach for the bottom and return. Reducing any movement in the upper body. Let's tickle my face. Couple more. Give me one more of these, and then roll onto your back and hug your knees into the chest. Brilliant. So we have a little hug on the spine, gently rocking, massaging out. So if you release the knees and let the knees draw a big circle on the ceiling, we can massage out the soft tissue all around the base of the spine. Take those circles in the other direction. And then again, I'm going to give you an option here. So feet on the floor, find that imprint in the spine to keep the navel to spine, front ribs closed, chest open, leg slide, scoop and return. So starting with the right leg, floating along the floor, keep the hips level, spirit level across the hips, scooping in the abs to lift the leg. When it gets to that obstruction, you can't go any further, bend and switch to the other leg. Now, to make this a little bit more challenging, we can float the other leg, the other foot off the floor. But please only do this if you're able to maintain that neutral spine. Chin tucked in towards the chest, so there's a nice long back of the neck. Trying to avoid any rounding of the shoulders. It's like we're backward pedaling. Pelvic tilt, trying to tip water out the back. Breathing deeply. Try for these last few rounds to draw your hip points together. So zipping everything in, or as if you're zipping up tight jeans, putting everything in. And then for the last round, can we think about the pelvic floor? So we have the pelvic tilt, squeezing in and up. And then hug the knees into the chest. Brilliant. So last kind of bit of awareness for the pelvis. Let's place the feet on the floor like we're going to take a bridge, but place the feet further away. So we're not in the classic bridge. Tilt the pelvis so we imprint the spine, and then rolling up through the spine, lifting the hips up to the ceiling, feeling that length in the neck. Now, working deeply into those hamstrings, you'll feel they work a lot harder when we get a bigger gap between the hips and the feet, and then rolling down, trying to maintain that pelvic tilt right to the last moment. One more like this, tilting, pelvis back, peeling the spine off, chest lifts up towards the chin, pause, keep the pelvic tilt and roll down. Let's just lengthen out the hamstrings that have just worked here. You can use your yoga fingers, peace fingers around the big toe and stretch out the hamstrings. Or we can hold at the backs of the legs. And the last little thing, it's a really simple way of easing out the lower back. Anytime you feel a little bit of a twinge there, if we place the feet on the floor as though we were taking the classic bridge, press the feet down into the floor and then away from you, and feel how we imprint when we naturally tilt the pelvis and we lengthen the back of the neck. And now the reverse, press the feet down, and as if drawing them in towards your seat, engaging those hamstrings, we get a curve in the spine, that concave. So just working between those 2 points, because it's in such a supportive position because we're on our backs. It's a really nice way to gently get a bit of movement into the spine when we're feeling a few little twinges there. Because here we're not going to our edge, we're not going as far as we can. Just getting that gentle mobility, feel that work into your core. Dragging the feet as if towards your seat, creating a concave. Because if we do this standing or on all fours, there's a slightly different emphasis here. The body's really supported the spine. We're not going to overdo anything. We just go gently between the two. See if you can really use the core though. With the core, you can go right to your end ability of squeezing in and emptying the lungs. And after that, hug the knees into the chest, open the arms out wide and let the knees sway side to side. And that's it. You stay here and just allow the knees to sway or take a full body stretch. Remember, your body knows best what it fancies doing now, and that will be usually the best thing for you. You can roll on the spine, and then we're done.